All right, everybody, welcome to another edition of the Sales Vitamin Podcast. We've got a special guest today, Punita Parekh. She is a content creator and she's a veteran in that industry. She knows how to build a story and help people and businesses create brands. So she is going to talk to us today about how content creation and building a brand and story building can help you sell and help your business sell. So Punita, thanks a lot for joining us.
Thanks so much, John.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking just a few minutes today to talk with us. So tell me, content marketing, it's kind of a buzzword and a lot of people, it's very heavily talked about today, but how does that boost a brand's value?
Yeah. So, you know what, John, content marketing is a very simplistic term. It's basically a marketing approach which kind of looks at distributing valuable and relevant content, which is mainly consistent and which is relatable to your audience. Because why are we looking at creating a content strategy? We're doing it for the audience. It's not about the product, it's mainly about what you're selling to your audience. So, I would say, increasing brand awareness can be a little challenging, but there are a few steps which I've kind of followed in my work tenure while I was working with brands like CNBC TV 18 and the Times of India, which is a broadcast channel. We did so much content marketing there, and I kind of applied these 7 basic strategies on how to look at boosting brand value. They were: one, understanding our audience. You need to understand their needs and their interests. Following after that, it's so important to kind of looking at creating a content strategy which basically focuses on your story. It's not about the product, but mainly the story, John, because your story will only help you connect with your audience, not your product. Thirdly, it's so important to kind of choose the kind of content which your audience wants to hear. It's not about your product, it's about what they want to hear. Fourthly, it's also important to kind of analyze your results, because you might look at creating 100 pieces of content, but it's very important to kind of analyze it in a timely manner. So I would say these few points kind of apply to your content marketing strategy and can totally look at boosting your brand value, John.
Yeah, absolutely. So if I were a sales professional, let's just say I'm a sales professional, how would you take a sales professional through starting a content strategy from the steps you were talking about?
Yeah, so I would say, in simplistic words, content marketing is basically an umbrella, okay, which covers a set of strategies to basically fulfill your needs and your goals. So, content marketing can work for any kind of business. Any brand can look at doing a content marketing strategy, but a content plan needs to have a few points which they need to keep in mind, a sales professional. Mainly, setting your mission in terms of the salesperson needs to realize in terms of what his goals are, what his mission is, what is he going out and selling to the audience. Also, the sales professional needs to understand in terms of establishing the KPIs, because knowing your KPIs is very crucial. Knowing your audience, knowing your customers, because right, like your audience are not your morons, right? It's mainly you got to treat them as your wife, as your own family. Your audience is your king. Also, it's so important for a sales professional to kind of figure out in terms of deciding what content accordingly will work for the customer or for their brand. So yeah, I would say these few points would kind of sum up the strategy for a sales professional.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. And from a content marketing strategy, how do you know that it's working, or how do you know? You've obviously done a lot of large content marketing strategies for businesses, but how do you know that it's working? How do you gauge to say, hey, this content marketing strategy, it's working?
Yeah. So, John, content marketing to be successful, you definitely need to have like a good content marketing strategy. So, from the audience research point of view, from scheduling the right content, the right time, You need to kind of look at building those blocks in a very perfect manner. So once you kind of align your thought process in terms of what content you want to go and put out, it kind of works. But I would say data analytics, John, kind of helps you analyze in terms of how good or bad your content is. Therefore, before you kind of decide in putting what your content should be out, it's very important to kind of decide on the metrics, because your metrics can help you track your content. Your metrics can help every member in the marketing team understand their objectives and their goals, because it's quite important to analyze what you put out for your audience. So I would say, like, because I've done these in my work tenure, and I would say there are a few ways to kind of monitor your content if it's performed well or no, John. So I would start with mainly saying that your first point is traffic, like traffic, generating traffic to your website, because traffic is the bloodline, of your online content. So how do you kind of engage your audience towards creating entertaining content towards your website, because traffic is very, very important. Secondly, you might create 100 pieces of content, John, on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, but quality content is important, because quality content will eventually, John, kind of convert into leads. Also, engagement. You may put out such amazing piece of content, John, but mainly even creating an engagement in terms of how to engage with your customers, that is also crucial. Hence, I always say keeping your customers first, understanding what your customers persona is, that will kind of help you decide how your content is working or not working.
Okay. So yeah, those are three really good metrics, and I could see where I could use those, whether I'm an organization or whether I'm an individual sales professional. Now, talk about storytelling. And I know the message is important first. So how important is that storytelling as part of that brand and content strategy?
Yeah, so you know what? Storytelling plays a very, very key role, John, because I would say, because I've done storytelling for most brands over my work tenure, storytelling is not a process. I never call it a process or a technique. It is basically the art. You need to have an art of storytelling. So, what is it to have an art of storytelling? It requires creativity, it requires vision, it requires practice, it requires how you're grasping what your audience wants, because stories are the real things which bring togetherness, which brings to inspire your audience, which brings to enlighten your audience, which brings to motivate your audience, because storytelling is all about how you motivate your audience, how your brand stands out, and how you're engaging up with your customers. Because always, as I said, it's not about your product, it's always about your customers. So I would say these few points are critical, and mainly your story needs to be engaging and more emotional. That's the key.
Yeah. So when you talk about building that story, how long of a process is that usually when you create something? Or is that something that's evolving all the time? Or do you really set someone's story and then, you stick with that? How do you approach it?
Yeah, so I'll give you a very simple example, John, that I kind of applied my storytelling strategy on LinkedIn. So yes, I have been on LinkedIn, John, for quite amount of time, but I would say I was a zombie on LinkedIn for many, many years. Yes, I was adding relevant people, but I didn't have a goal. Why am I here on LinkedIn? But since the lockdown happened and since everybody was at home, I thought, let me get on to LinkedIn. So what I did is I kind of created a content map for myself in terms of what I want to talk to my audience, John. So what I did is in the month of May 2020, I revamped my LinkedIn. I kind of made it look in a very professional manner. I did some endorsements, all of that stuff I did. Then I started with curating content in two ways. One, talking about my personal traits. What are my personal traits? What was I as a child? What do I mean by, yes, I did fail as a child in terms of my schooling years and I was not a good student, but that doesn't matter as long as I'm a hustler today. So these are my personal traits that I spoke about on LinkedIn. which created a lot of engagement, because everybody, right, John, kind of has those trials and tribulations in their growing years. So when I spoke about them in a very authentic manner, it kind of worked for me. That was my personal part of my story. Then I spoke about my professional part. What was my professional part, John? My professional part was mainly about storytelling, because I have done content marketing for so many years. So I worked with so many brands, John. So I kind of I kind of enlightened my audience about the ABCDs of content marketing. What is content marketing? What is storytelling? How does it boost brand value? So I gave some case study examples. So in a nutshell, I would say it worked so well for me. And most importantly, while I did all of the storytelling, I also kind of supported a lot of people, because I always believe in, we only rise by lifting others. So I supported so many storytellers on LinkedIn. So in a way, it worked so magically for me that it garnered not only 24,000 followers in a span of 3 months,
Wow.
but today I can confidently say, John, that I have built relationships. That's it.
Yeah, that's you've developed. I mean, 24,000 followers. That's pretty impressive since, that May timeframe. I mean, that's and I know that's maybe been longer than that for all of them, but a good bit of them in that piece.
Exactly.
What do you think's the biggest skill that's lacking for people that are creating content right now? What's the biggest skill that you see that they're lacking that they really need to improve?
Yeah. So, John, producing content is easy. Like, it's no big deal. But producing good quality content is harder, because it does take time, it does take skill to provide good quality content and consistent content. So I would say, like, you can kind of focus towards creating content in a very qualitative manner more than quantitative manner, because most people kind of curate content on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, but they don't put their thoughts into it in terms of what the audience wants to hear from them. So I would say quality versus quantity, that's the skill they should kind of apply, and it would work magically for them.
And how have you seen content creation kind of adjust or change during the pandemic? Has it changed much? How has that changed?
Yeah, I will say that I want to talk about one example of a brand, John. It's called Amul. Amul is the India's largest food product marketing organization. So Amul is a brand, okay, and we've been following Amul since we were children. So Amul is a brand which kind of always believed in winning people's hearts, millions of hearts across India. So what they did in the pandemic was they kind of curated and changed the marketing strategies in a way where most companies in the COVID area was not spending on their marketing strategies. But what Amul did is Amul kind of created a campaign, outdoor campaign, print campaign, digital campaign, which spoke about stay healthy, not hungry. So that created so much traction, John, that everybody was kind of following what Amul's story was. In a way, instead of being silent in the COVID times, they kind of went out and supported the initiative about being healthy. It's okay, being healthy is important, but don't be hungry.
Yeah. No, that's a great example of kind of a shift in strategy. Now, how do you feel technology is influencing or dictating content strategy versus when you first started several years ago?
Yeah, so when I way back started in 2004, yes, definitely technology was very, very different, John. And technology has definitely kind of refined and reinvented the content marketing strategies. So I would say there are many, many tools, which kind of help you boost your brand identity. I would say AI, your artificial intelligence has come in play. Google has developed. There are so many tools on Google or on different Play Store apps which kind of boost your knowledge, and there are so many resources available. There is HubSpot available, there is so many apps like Contently available, Marketo available. So I would say definitely it's reinvented in such a way that it becomes very simple for the customer to gain knowledge from these platforms. John?
Yeah, absolutely. And what are some of the resources that you like to use? Like, what are some of your favorite, content creation resources? What do you use? And that maybe whether they're free or even if they cost you a little bit of money, what are the ones that you like to use?
So since I've been curating content for 3 months on LinkedIn, I mainly use platforms, John, such as HubSpot, such as Contently. There is Quora, which help you with a lot of knowledge and guidance for creating your marketing strategies. Also, there is a very brilliant tool, John, called CoSchedule, which most marketers are using. But CoSchedule kind of helps you organize your marketing requests, which helps you automate your team workflows in a very simplistic manner. In a very simplistic manner. So I would say these are the few resources which I have personally used and have really gained from them.
Okay. And what would you tell somebody that's kind of hesitant? They really aren't sure about, well, do I really want to create content? And what would you tell somebody that's hesitant about it?
Yeah, I mean, when people kind of hear the word content marketing, John, they do feel hesitant because they kind of wonder what is this confusing word. But I would say to create a truly successful content marketing campaign, it's as important as figuring out who your customers are. Once you kind of figure out your customers, you understand their persona, you understand their marketing thought process, I feel one should look at applying that for this brand. Then I shouldn't have an issue in terms of, utilizing that and being hesitant with your content marketing strategies.
Yeah. And when you look at content marketing, I want to say there's a blurred line there, and personal branding. How do you advise someone to, hey, you're going to you've got or a business or an individual, you've got a content strategy, but how do you advise people from a personal branding standpoint, how that's going to help them versus a corporate branding standpoint? Because those are kind of two different things, but they can kind of both play together.
Exactly. I do totally agree with that because see, creating your own personal branding also requires some thought process, John. But even if you're a small business and you want to look at creating your personal brand, it's important to understand in terms of what your niche is. Once you kind of figure out your niche in terms of, say, you excel in finance or you excel in, say, for example, maybe real estate. Once you kind of figure out your niche, curating content shouldn't be a problem because you know that subject so well, John, that it becomes quite easy for the content marketer to kind of apply that for your brand you know
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the difficult part for some people is getting that drilled down to that niche, to that level where, you know, you are your personal brand, but that niche really distinguishes you. Um, one more question for you, but before I ask you that last question, what I want to do is let you tell everybody, where can they get in touch with you? What's the best place to contact you? To talk with you.
So I would say, since I'm so active on LinkedIn, since I'm kind of educating my audience on LinkedIn, enlightening them and kind of inspiring them, I would say LinkedIn is the best platform to connect with me as Punita Parekh. Punita Parekh, yeah.
Okay. So one last question for you, and I have all the guests answer this question.
Yeah, sure.
If you had one piece of advice from a content strategy standpoint, and you could only give a person one piece of advice, one sales vitamin, what's that one thing you would leave them with?
I've worked with many sales professionals in my work tenure, but the one thing I would say is kind of get to know your clients before you kind of sell something to them and build relationships.
Man, that's very simplified, but excellent. That's a you're not pitching right away. You're not selling right
Yeah,
away. You're developing
yeah,
a relationship and you're getting to know
exactly.
them. So that's a great vitamin. I appreciate you being on today. I know you're busy and I appreciate you taking some time. And I know the listeners are going to get a ton of value out of this. And they're going to learn some things about content strategy and content marketing that they didn't know before. So I appreciate you coming on today.
Thanks so much, John. It was just lovely being here on the Sales Vitamin podcast.
You bet.